Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of CloudTalent360.com. My name is Jay Sen, and I'm here with
Martin Gessner.
And we are the co-founders of Cloud Talent. And our guest today is Vamsi Krishna out of Australia. He's the leader of TechForce. And really quickly, before we get into the interview, we're going to talk about Vamsi's personal journey. We're going to talk about TechForce, his consulting firm. And in part 3, we're going to talk about Vamsi's tips for your career, how to have a great Salesforce career, what he's learned having interviewed many people, having been in Salesforce. So it's going to be a great show. Our mission at Cloud Talent, really quickly, is to really empower you to have the best Salesforce career possible. So our goal is to give you career advice, career coaching, and also we do have a job placement and recruiting service to help you find the right company to work with, or if you're looking for people. So let's get started in part 1 of today's interview, where I'm going to talk with Vamsi a little bit before we talk about his consulting firm and his background. He's got an amazing Salesforce background. Just to start way back at the very beginning, Vamsi, let's start when you were even in high school or your early days. What would you say was your very first spark of entrepreneurial experience? What was the very first thing?
Thanks, Jay, for getting me into this. It's a tricky question, going back in memory. I think it's more of a learning and curiosity that I would say that triggered all of this. It's raising hands wherever required and say, I'm there. And it's coordinating a group of people. So those are the basic skills that I picked up in high school and my university, where it's coordinating events or running a campaign. We did few electoral stuff in the university where I'm not leading the stuff, but I was campaigning, lobbying with a group of people for the contestants. I think all of these is the people skills.
You were going to St. John's, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I went into MIT, the Indian MIT.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
For my university. So all of these are helping me now. When I think back where I'm getting all of these, it's linked what happened in the past.
And just to give some context to that, I think what's interesting about that, and we'll talk a little bit more about it because I want to dig into that, entrepreneurial spark and that, leadership spark. But it really says something about you, because we'll talk in a minute about where you've reached now and how you're leading, TechForce, and how many certifications you have on Salesforce, your depth. But what I think is really incredible, Vamsi, about your story is that you started out helping people, and you're even in your very early days, you're raising your hand and really trying to find out what people need and support them. And so you started at the very early days. Your very core is like, how can I provide value? How can I answer questions? How can I participate? And how can I help people? And can you talk a little bit about the first thing you did that you feel was like an entrepreneurial, kind of experience?
It's, again, getting into the community, right? So the Salesforce community, which I started getting in early 2010, now it's close to 10 years, is identifying what I can contribute back to the community, right? And the entire community, what they call Ohana, is all about learning, sharing, supporting each other, right? So that once you get into that, you automatically pick up that values, which is the core of the community, and then you'll start identifying where you can add those values.
Yeah, you didn't start out saying, I want to create a business. You didn't start out saying, sell lemonade, or I want to start a consulting firm.
So that was never in the plan. So how it shaped up is all helping each other in the community, right? So like a lot of people helped me learn the platform. There was no Trilot back then, no online LMS supporting everyone. So it's more about identifying the experts within those core areas, talking to each other. That's how I started picking up the Salesforce developer group in Sydney, which I'm leading it now. And then I was contributing to Stack Exchange, Salesforce Stack Exchange, online forums. We were having a lot of online events coordinating between us. And then that's how all of these started.
So just, what's interesting, if I understand it correctly, is that you really were very curious and you just really enjoy the learning process. And most importantly is that
sharing back with the community.
Community, right? And you don't see it as a solo experience. You see it as something that you do with others. And you see it as from the very early days, which is that, give value and exchange value.
So which has become a core in our TechForce team as well, right? So we support each other. We provide the platform for everyone to learn new things and then share it with others in the team as well and outside the community as well.
Wow, it's really interesting. It's a very interesting background because it kind of speaks to like the people that contribute a lot on GitHub or contribute a lot on, I saw you're in Code Mentor. I see that you're, mentoring people. You're leading the Salesforce group over there, Salesforce community group over there. So, I think that it's a really interesting background, really kind of like a grassroots almost.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yep, definitely. So again, it's all thanks to the Salesforce community, I would say, which gives a total different perspective in the technology-driven world, right? So it's more about people's skills, showing that empathy, showing that compassion, supporting people coming in new into the ecosystem, how you can enable them to learn the platform and then bring them up to the industry standards.
Yeah. One last question on this part is that when was the first time you heard of Salesforce? When was the first time that you sort of thought, okay, I want to do this?
The first time I heard of Salesforce is back in 2005 and 2006 when I was working with Dell. We were building a custom call center application and we did a bit of integration with Salesforce. Right. So back then I didn't know that I'll be jumping into Salesforce, but I took the serious step of getting into Salesforce back in 2010 when I moved into Sydney. All right. So I was looking for what's the right way for me to get into, and then that's how I jumped into Salesforce.
Okay. And when you made that decision in 2010, what was it in 2010 that said, I really want to do this, Salesforce?
It's getting into the cloud. So before that point, it was all application development for desktops. Right, so that's where my core expertise is, and then I was always looking into what's next for me, and then cloud application development is the logical next step back in 2010, 2011, those sort of time frame, and Salesforce is one of the leading cloud application provider, so which gave me the right jump as well.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I really like your community, beginnings. That you're working as almost like answering a lot of questions, raising your hand, even back in university. Then, with the Salesforce users group, with the forums, with Stack Exchange, pretty much every single level is just about community and all about exchanging knowledge, helping people, learning together, which is a very interesting background. It's almost in a way that the business happened from that.
Yep. It was not a planned business growth. It's more of a learning and sharing that transformed into a business.
And I really appreciate getting to know your, the origin of that, and the journey of that. So I really appreciate that. That was really helpful. So for everyone that's listening, I mean, this is a really unique kind of story, not one we've heard frequently, which is essentially someone raising their hand, helping people out, exchanging knowledge, being helped by others, really seeing it as a community journey, community growth. And a lot of where Vamsi is today is really, his contribution to the community, but his also being willing to exchange and learn from the community.
That's the important part, right? So when I jumped in, a lot of people supported and helped me and get me to where I am now. And that's what I'm giving back to the community.
Love it.
I think that Salesforce is quite well known for having a very strong community, but I think what sets Vamsi apart is just that he's taken that maybe to the next level. And I remember years ago when I was working with Vamsi, he would spend, his after hours, he would spend, hours in the evening looking to see how he could help people on Stack Exchange or the Success community, answering questions. And, it's giving and getting back. So you give, you help other people learn. And as they say, like if you teach other people, you're actually learning yourself as well. So I see it as like it's a feedback loop. You give and you get back.
Definitely it is. Yeah.
He's really taken the time in his own time, and as he's also said, he's become a user group leader. He's become we haven't talked about yet, but he's become an MVP, and so he's really been a strong part of the community.
I think that's great. It's a great starting point for today's interview, and also a good role model for people who want to ask the question, like, how do I actually enjoy my experience in Salesforce? Not just only, do it for the money, but also really feel meaningful, really feel fulfilled. And having the combination of being able to earn enough and being able to be intellectually, growing, but also having it from the heart and feeling like, I'm part of a group of people. We're learning together. We have great relationships. That's really awesome. And I think for newbies, there's that opportunity for them to get into that. It's never too late and it's never too early to get into the community and to start exchanging and try to answer questions and learn from other people. So thanks for sharing your journey in part 1 with us, Vamsi. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back in part 2, where we catch up with Vamsi and learn about his consulting firm, what he's created, what the core values are, who they serve, and essentially, what he's up to today. And we'll be back right after the break to talk about Vamsi's consulting firm, TechForce, in a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's Jay Sen here with Martin Gessner. We are the co-founders of CloudTalent360.com. And we're here. Our mission is to help you have the best career possible in Salesforce. Also partner with companies to find the best talent and help to make sure your company has the right people you need. Today, our guest is Vamsi Krishna. He is the founder of TechForce. And in this part of the interview, we're going to build on part 1, where Vamsi talked about his community origins, exchanging value, answering questions, really benefiting from the community aspects and also contributing to the community aspects of Salesforce. And now we're going to talk in part 2. Martin's going to talk to Vamsi about his consulting company, TechForce. So I'll hand it over to Martin.
So Vamsi, we actually worked together many years ago, and I'm really curious to find out, what's happened since then. So I understand that you've built up TechForce services, and how would you describe it in terms of a few sentences? What does TechForce services do? What sort of customers do you have? What sort of value do you provide?
Yeah, sure. It's close to 5 years for us in TechForce now, and where we are now is working with enterprises, governments, and organizations in supporting their Salesforce journey. So where it all started 5 years back is I come from the development background, and it's all with custom application development experience, and all our initial hires were all in custom application development, which was a bit of a niche experience in Salesforce back then, because everyone was focusing in general implementations, but we were focusing in-depth custom development. So that's how it all started, and then we get into custom development, integrating Salesforce with other enterprise applications. And then we also support DevOps journey, doing the CI/CD side of things for Salesforce. And we also do data and analytics. It's following the data within Salesforce and outside Salesforce between the applications and systems. So that's our core expertise.
I think that's really interesting because, there are so many Salesforce consulting companies these days. And it's interesting that you found, a need in the market, and you found where to specialize. And so you talked about custom development and integration, and that I think has set you apart. So can you talk a little bit more about just that how you kind of found that niche, and how you think that has helped your company grow over the last few years?
Yeah, like I said, it all started with application development, right? So I come from the development background for almost close to 20 years now. Been working with C, C++ right from basics, and then got into .NET, and then moved into Salesforce. So since I started in 2015 with TechForce, the primary projects we were picking up is all custom application development, and the developers we hired were also supporting and expanding on that base that we got in 2015. So that's the core of that. And then we expanded when we started looking out what's next after custom development. The logical step is to do integrations with other enterprise and either on-prem or cloud applications. So that became our logical expansion. And then we followed the journey of data. So once you have the data in Salesforce and integrate it with, it flows into other systems, and data and analytics came in, right? So we work with a lot of enterprise data warehouses and data and analytics applications, providing BI capabilities, all those. And then all of these together, when you join them, the core requirement is automating, which is DevOps, right? So it's not looking at individual pieces and then doing one at a time. It's how you can help the enterprises and governments or any organization to automate this end-to-end journey. So that's where DevOps comes in.
Okay. Yeah,
so that's where we specialized development, integration, data analytics, and DevOps.
Right. And I think that's a unique perspective. We haven't heard that before, just in terms of, starting with one particular area of that custom development and then seeing what's the next logical piece and how can you build on that and how can you help companies and really get known for doing that well. Like I said, there's a lot of companies that will just do, anything Salesforce, but you have distinguished yourself. And I think that probably has helped your company grow. So how many, can you talk a little bit about the growth of the company? It started with yourself and where is it now?
Yep. So we started in September 2015, was just me back then. And then we grew at a gradual, cautious expansion, I would say. And we hired all developers initially when we were looking at custom development. Then we got in consultants, business analysts. We have testers in-house and we have DevOps specialists and integration specialists now, aligned with the 4 pillars that we are offering. And it goes back into identifying what values we can add to our customers across all these 4 pillars and then identifying the right talent. And we have developed those talent across the team, right? So it's not just finding the right person from outside. It's also identifying and grooming the people we already have, positioning in those 4 areas that we are focusing on.
Right. And so how many people do you have in your team now?
So we are close to 30 people across Sydney, Melbourne, and Canberra.
Wow.
Working with enterprises and governments.
Right. Okay. And what were the main challenges that you've had over the years to grow the business?
I think any consulting business gets into the same challenge, right? So it's identifying the next opportunity aligned with your values and growing the team at the right pace as you build your pipeline, which is always like hand in hand. So
right.
You need to have a vision of what you are doing next. Also, you need to be strong in delivering what you already have, right? So you don't want to miss out on either. So keeping a good balance between what you're working on now and what you need to have next is always a good challenge to have, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a particular challenge for consulting organizations. They have to always balance the projects with the team, with the vision, with the next projects, keeping all that in line and keeping it growing. I think that's a really remarkable achievement for yourself to have built that up from a 1-person consulting company up to 30 people and serving all of those different areas.
I have a quick question for you, Vamsi. One thing that's striking me, first of all, I think summarizing the 4 pillars, can you just summarize the 4 pillars really quickly of TechForce? There's 4 main pillars, right? So what are the 4 pillars? Salesforce,
custom development, that gets into integration to data and analytics, and then DevOps, automating all of that.
Okay, I see. Okay, so development with 3 sub areas, and then you said DevOps, right?
Yes.
Okay. And data analysis was 1 too, right? Data analysis.
Yep. Custom development, integration, data and analytics, and then DevOps.
Okay, great. And the question that came to my mind, because you didn't really start out saying I want to build a consulting firm, and you didn't really necessarily start out saying I want to have a 30-person consulting firm. So the question that comes to my mind is someone like yourself, who's a community-oriented, really wants to help and be learn and exchange. How are you doing sales? How are you able to get that sales part of your organization going?
It again aligns with our value proposition and branding, right? So the moment you specialize and then you make sure that you have the complete authority on what you're delivering, right?
Yeah.
So, or I would say mastery of what you're delivering, I think people realize the value you're bringing in. So that's the core which is driving our sales. I won't say it's even sales, it's building the pipeline, right? So it's having the right network and making sure people understand what you're adding value to them. So it's not about us, it's about them, right? So when we position that this is what we're doing, but this is what you're getting, people automatically realize.
Somebody will see you speaking, or somebody will hear that you're helping out somebody in their team. And then they'll contact you and say, hey, can I hire you to do a bit more? Can I hire your company to help?
So that's how the initial probably 2 to 3 years were going in. We never had a traditional sales business development in our organization, it was all developers and consultants, and everyone was technical. And then most of the opportunities we got were all inbound because people see the value we are adding in the community, and then they want us to work with them in their organizations. So that's how it happened. And in the recent last 1 year, we started building our own sales and business development and doing a bit of outbound activities as well, because that's what is going to make you bigger than what you are currently.
Great.
I think that's really interesting that you really haven't had to build outbound until now. And, I know that you are very well known in the community. You speak at events, you're a developer user group leader, and you're an MVP. And as you said, you've built up authority in those areas. And so I think naturally, word of mouth, that will bring business to you. So I think that's...
It's working with the right partners, right? So it's not just, I don't take the entire credit, right? So it's identifying those other external partners in the business who can position you as the right. So for example, we work with few other people in AWS and Microsoft. We were not in AWS and Microsoft back then, but wherever they find opportunities for Salesforce, they were able to refer us, right? So it's just building those right industry partnerships. It's identifying the key people who can support you, who's aligned with your own business goals, and everyone appreciates each other, and then that automatically develops the network.
Thanks so much, Vamsi, for sharing a bit about TechForce with us. And for people who are listening, to summarize, essentially, TechForce, if you're going to recommend TechForce to somebody in a couple of sentences, I think that what you could say is, number one, is TechForce is a consulting firm that essentially has 4 core pillars that they utilize to understand your needs and deliver value to you. And secondly, the TechForce is deeply integrated in the community. So if you have a challenge and TechForce doesn't have the answer, TechForce has a network so that they can discover the answer, and they can look at what's going on and what are the new practices happening. So the 2 key differentiators, if you're going to recommend TechForce, are number one, understanding the 4 pillars that TechForce is building its process on, and number 2, the fact that TechForce is really a community organization that is not about, TechForce is about your company and solving your problem. So I really appreciated, Martin, your interview with Vamsi in part 2. And Vamsi, thank you for sharing your vision for TechForce and your mission. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with Vamsi now to talk about your Salesforce career. And all the people Vamsi has interviewed or worked with, he's going to give a couple of key tips for people who want to be really happy and successful and fulfilled, and also have a good income, what to do, what not to do, from his point of view, what are his key tips for having a successful and fulfilling Salesforce career. We'll be back right after the break. Hi, and welcome back, everyone. I'm Jay Sen. I'm here with Martin Gessner. We're the co-founders of CloudTalent360.com. Today, our guest is Vamsi Krishna out of Australia. He is the CEO and the founder of TechForce. He's also an MVP. He's a Salesforce MVP. He's the leader of one of the Salesforce user groups. And in part 1, Vamsi shared the beginning of his journey, how he was really in university just wanting to learn and wanting to help others learn. And so he called it raising his hand. He said, whenever I saw someone struggling, I raised my hand and I try to help them. Or sometimes when I'm struggling, I also raise my hand and try to ask someone to help me. And that was the beginning of his journey towards, the part 2, which is essentially the values and the vision and the mission of his consulting organization, which is about community, which is about exchanging value. It's about not always having to be perfect, but always being willing to learn and find the right answer for the right problem, and listening to your customers. And now in part 3, we're going to talk to Vamsi about your Salesforce career, because Vamsi has interviewed a lot of people, has seen a lot of people go through Salesforce. And so I want to, have Vamsi help you and get some advice from Vamsi about how to, really have a great Salesforce career. Now let's start with the first question, which is, in the modern time, right, things have changed. It's a complex ecosystem with Salesforce, right? So for the new person who's getting into Salesforce, right, let's say they just got certified 6 months ago or 3 months ago, very recently, okay? What do you think are what would you recommend as sort of the first 2 or 3 things that someone should do once they have their certification and they want to really build a good foundation for Salesforce?
Yeah, sure. Salesforce is a very matured market now, so it's not like what it was 10, 15 years back, right? So now there are heaps of opportunities out there, but again, there are heaps of talent as well. So the first thing I would suggest anyone is identify your core, where you can add value, whether it's development or administration or consulting or architecture, right? So these are the high level 4 different career paths you can have, depending on which background you come from and what skills you have. Identify those core modules in Salesforce which you can specialize, and also the core business vertical that you can master. So it's together your technical and business knowledge that gives an edge to you, and then identify that corresponding role where you can position yourself. You can't just go and say, I'm a Salesforce analyst, I can do everything, right? So that's not going to work. So you need to find whether you're a financial services cloud, or you're a health cloud, or you're an industry specialist, and then you need to come up and say, I'm a developer or a consultant or admin. So identify that right combination which positions you well, and go in depth, and then look for the right role.
Yeah, I think what you said is really very helpful. Number one is to choose a path, developer or consultant or architect, or admin. And then the other thing you said also that I think is really helpful is what a lot of people miss is industry, fit, because especially starting out, if somebody has a natural, say, for example, interest in finance or experience with finance, that can really give them an edge. And so when you're looking at what you're going, or if it's, for example, insurance, or it's healthcare, or any of the other areas, that's really a good advice to start out for people starting out. So in terms of the next question I have is, there are a lot of people, Vamsi, who have experience with an industry. They were doing accounting for 5 years or 10 years, or they were doing sales for 5 years or 10 years, or they were doing some other industry, finance, insurance, whatever it was. And they just got into Salesforce. So they've got the industry background. Maybe they're a little bit older. They're not right out of university, and they're looking to make a career pivot, and kind of take that industry experience and get into Salesforce. So what are your, what's your top 2 or 3 things that you think that they should know that might help them for those people that are making that career change?
Yeah, it goes back to my previous point, right? So aligning your technical and industry knowledge. So if you already have that industry knowledge, then identify those core modules in Salesforce that you can pick up and learn and master, aligned with those industry knowledge. And then that gives you a unique value in the market. So if you can pick up those modules in Salesforce, which is related to finance, accounting, and integrating other accounting applications with Salesforce, which is a lot of businesses are doing, right? So they have Salesforce as a CRM, and they have their finance application in the backend. And if you go in and say, I know both the sides, and I can also do a seamless integration between both the applications, you have a right fit for the requirement.
I think that's a really important point that some people miss. They don't understand how wide Salesforce is now, and that it's really impossible to be an expert in every single area of it. And so what Vamsi has suggested there is something that I think we should just really emphasize. So if somebody, for example, has a customer service background, then it would make sense to specialize in Service Cloud. Put those 2 things together. If you have a sales operations background, specialize obviously in Sales Cloud and sales processes. If you're coming from field service, then Salesforce has field service Lightning. So that's some way that you can distinguish yourself and make yourself stand out. And put, like Vamsi said, put those things all together. Put your strengths together with your industry background, together with which modules or cloud or which features of Salesforce really can kind of make you stand out, distinguish yourself, and that will set you apart, I believe.
Yep, and it helps everyone, right? So as a person who's learning the platform, it helps you so that you can narrow down to only those which you can specialize and then start from there. Otherwise, Salesforce is huge, right? So it's not easy to learn everything in one go. And then it helps the person who's looking for a right resource, because you are perfectly matching the requirement.
I think it is a really good differentiation, because instead of just trying to be generalist, if you do a little bit of homework, as for people especially who have some experience, leverage your experience and find the companies that can benefit from that, and also specialize, your track based on that. So the last question today is going to be, if you have to think about what makes somebody successful as an internal employee, and then compare that with a consultant. Is there anything that you would say that, someone should do something a little bit differently if they want to have a really successful experience internally versus as a consultant?
I think the most important thing is aligning in the team and supporting each other, right? So individually, yes, you have to learn, you have to master, you have to grow. But at the same time, if you are helping others in your team to get them to where they want to be, supporting each other, that's the most important skill I think any organization will look for.
What I just want to say about that is, as you were saying that, it's almost a pie chart came up in my mind. And the pie chart was like some percent of it is community. So for example, if you're listening to this and you want to have a great Salesforce career, map out your week and devote some hours in your week to getting to know your team members, getting to know your stakeholders, and just being really curious about where their challenges are, where even their Salesforce technical questions are. The biggest,
it's aligning the strengths and weaknesses, right? So
right.
You will be strong in certain areas, but if you identify your next person who is strong in few other areas, how best you both can work together in solving a business problem.
Yeah, I think the critical theme from this interview, just to wrap it up, is don't work in isolation. You're not alone. If there's one tagline, it's not, you're not alone. And you, in order to not be alone and to be connected to the community, some people do it naturally. Some people do it because they started when they were in high school or college, raising their hand to help people. But for other people, they don't necessarily do that naturally. So I think where, we can learn the most from, this interview, and what you can take away if you're a listener, is think about your day, think about your week, and essentially set up some time for you to connect with people, exchange with people, and learn with people, and make it a habit, make it a practice. Start to develop that. Don't think just because you're studying the technical side, or just because you're programming, or just because you're doing, building business objects or declarative, features. Go and meet people, interact with people, listen to people, be involved in the user groups. You're not alone. And I think that's great, really helpful advice to people, Vamsi, and something that honestly, it might be obvious to some people, but I'm guessing there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that if they can have a pie chart where they dedicate and actually proactively think, I'm going to dedicate 10% or 3 to 5 hours a week just to connect, listen, learn, and share, that it may not be the immediate, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month huge, increase, but it's like putting interest in a bank account, and
it'll come back to you.
It'll come back to you. So thanks, everybody. This is the end of the interview today, the show today. So thank you.
Thanks for the nice summary. You've done a great job summarizing it.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for listening to this episode of CloudTalent360.com. This is our Salesforce Consulting Leaders series. We will also have a series with MVPs, and so it's nice to have Vamsi. He's kind of checking off 2 boxes on our list. And today we learned, essentially 3 things. Number 1 is community, not isolation. Number 2 is choose your focus in terms of your domain plus your path, what path you want to be on. Combine those 2 together, add as much value as you can, and participate. Don't feel like you're alone, because that's not going to give you the enjoyment and the meaningful career. So thanks so much, everyone, for listening. That's the end of today's episode. And we'll have show notes below. We'll have a link to Vamsi's company as well. And make sure you subscribe to our channel. And we'll be back in the future with another interview with a Salesforce consulting leader on CloudTalent360.com. Thank you very much.